Welcome back, Holotable Heroes, to another Galaxy of Heroes video. In today's video, we're going to be discussing the Sector 4 feats in the latest edition of Conquest. Everybody wants to get their favorite arachnid Admiral Trench, and your boy Scribble is here to help. Without further ado, let's break this down. The Sector 4 feats are possibly the most irritating feats in the entirety of this Conquest. The silver lining of which, however, is if you can get basically everything else done this Conquest, you can actually ignore 3 of these. Now, this sector contains inflicting torture 50 times, which is a torture in and of itself. Disarmed is win 14 battles with no attackers in your squad, which isn't as bad as it sounds, and defeat 50 enemies with the Hutt Cartel, which is also relatively easy if you have the right setup. Finally, we need to win 14 battles with Ewoks, which I tell you is not happening unless your name is the Gerbil. Now, as you can see, I am safely ignoring 3 of these feats as I just don't think it's worth the effort, but I'm still going to put forward some solutions for these. Before we get started though, usually I start these videos with a little bit of advice about teams to look out for. However, this time we're taking a slightly different tack. Instead, I want you to look out for specific types of tech and even go back over your previous sectors to take a look at some of the techs that you might have on the Wandering Scavenger nodes. Now, in particular, there's 2 pieces of tech that I think are critically important in order to make these feats a lot easier and manageable to complete. The first one I want you to look out for is this initial tether tech. Now, this tether tech starts the opponent with a mass ability block. It is incredibly valuable. High value in getting these feats done without any issues. If you find one, be sure to capture it because I use it to complete a number of these feats. In addition to that, always keep an eye out for this initial frenzy tech. That applies frenzy to your entire team at the start of battle, which lets you take a bunch of additional turns. Now, frenzy is an ability, it is a buff that grants you 100% TM when you use a special ability. You can see it on Bosk's special ability when he taunts, and you can also see it on Maul, the Conquest character, when he starts a game. The next issue that I want to talk about is the Datadisks setup that I'm currently using, ladies and gentlemen. I'm not using anything that is outside of the ordinary, but I feel like this particular setup gives me a massive advantage in completing many of these feats. So let's go over. I run a Ruthless Swiftness with Ruthless Offense setup here, so that when the enemy drops below 100% health, I'm gaining some additional stats. I feel Swiftness is more important than offense. Voluntary Vanguard provides me with a taunt from the very beginning of the game, and it will always be on the strongest or healthiest unit in the match. Very useful for protecting weaker characters. Then I run a pair of Zealous Ambitions. One is blue and one is green, and that gives me a lot of damage on my support and healer units, which is invaluable, I promise you. Unbreakable here is not an ideal setup. We could go with something better than this, but that max health and additional defense gives me a lot more survivability, and it feeds into this Zealous Ambition over here. More health translating into more offense for our supports and our healers. The Entrenched over here gives me a little bit of survivability at the start, which can be useful to some of our weaker characters. And like I said, that second green Zealous Ambition down there, just boosting the offense. I could probably drop one of the Unbreakables and throw another Zealous Ambition on there. Do try to keep an eye out for those Datadisks. They offer unlimited power. But not for C though, because he's not a support or a healer. Hard break, mate. Let's start breaking down these feats. We are going to begin with the No Attackers feats. There are a number of teams that you can use here, but I'm going to start off with my favorites. Imperial Troopers, just make sure you don't take either Death Trooper or Dark Trooper, as they are both attackers. If you're going in with Moff Gideon, Veers, Stark, Range, and Piet, you will have no attackers in this squad, and it has got absolute monstrous firepower. Those Zealous Ambition Datadisks turn Piet into an absolute animal. And Moff Gideon is also a support type, so he's also able to give you additional damage output. You saw how quickly those guys died? Unreal. You can use that against a number of teams, but you can't really drain the stamina down too far because our units are highly dependent on the speed getting out of the gate in order for us to start killing units. So let's go over a few more. Those of you that have got Jedi Master Luke can massively benefit from his leadership. I'm just throwing in a bunch of support types here. We've got Barriss, we've got Shakti, GMY, and Hermit Yoda. Don't forget, Grandmaster Yoda is a support, not an attacker, even though basically everything in his kit is more or less attacking oriented. he is not actually an attacker, so we can benefit from his masses of offense, gaining additional boosts from his Zealous Ambition Datadisks. And yeah, we get to use Jedi Master Luke's ability to call assists, coin, and deal stupid amounts of damage for everybody else. Lots of survivability here. You can see we're taking on a horrendous Padme team that's reflecting all our damage back to us, but it doesn't really matter. Now note, I have got the Frenzy Tech active on here. That's not because I need it, but that was because I was farming other feats earlier and I had it applied. So yeah, another team for those of you that do have JML. We're not quite done yet though. Now we are going up against the boss node of this particular sector, but this can be done on a number of nodes. I'm using Rogue One featuring Wat Tambor. Note you can't take Jin or Bistan with this team because they are attackers. Everybody else here is a support apart from K2SO, who happens to be a tank. You will immediately notice that I've got the Tether Tech active here. This is not necessary, ladies and gentlemen. This is just a leftover from when I was using it for feats earlier today. Most importantly, Adrad gains loads of additional offense from this Zealous Ambition, and his AoEs will absolutely shred. He's actually down 20% or 30% stamina going into this battle and is still able to do significant amounts of damage to these guys. But also Captain Han here, who offers another revive in case your Adrad dies, and Adrad himself have both got revives baked into their kit. If Adrad does hit the Hope mechanic, then he will delete the entire board and revive any units that are dead. Irrespective of their tags, he just revives everybody. Isn't that nice? Isn't that beautiful? Isn't that great? Love it. Anyway, this should be able to be used if right at the end of the Conquest Sector, if you are having difficulties farming up data disks, but also if you need to come back and finish off those no attackers while still gaining some benefits towards your datacrons. Lovely jubbly. Next feat. Next up, we are looking at the Torture feat. Now, I highly recommend you skip this one, ladies and gentlemen. It is just long, it's drawn out, and it doesn't give you a massive benefit. This is one of the first places I'm using a Frenzy Tech here to try and really gain the most advantage out of it, but ultimately I'm only able to land about 5 Tortures here. So I'm going in with EP Mara Jade, as well as Grand Inquisitor and BT1 and 000. Now, I appreciate not a lot of people will have Grand Inquisitor, he just adds an additional source. You can still get some of these done with 000 instead. However, I do find the chances are minimal, the options are limited, another reason why I recommend skipping this feat. Unfortunately with unfortunately with 000, when they use their Torture ability, it will not reapply if the target already has it. The idea here is to cause a complete stun lock on Nest, so that you can keep on applying Torture to her with Grand Inquisitor. 000 is also able to put triple stacks of translation on the Grand Inquisitor to lower the cooldowns on his abilities, so that he is able to apply multiple stacks of that Torture when he gets the opportunity to. I'm being careful here to try and not kill the units with Torture too quickly. Whenever you attack a unit that has got Torture, that unit, if it is Dark Side, is going to gain a stack of translation, and we want triple stacks of translation on the Grand Inquisitor as soon as possible. I accidentally attacked Nest there rather than go after the units that have got Torture, which would have been preferable. But hey, I was learning as I was going here. So we've gotten rid of basically everybody here, and we've got just Zalbar and Nest left alive. So I attack Zalbar there with his last bit of Torture, and you can see now that we've got triple stacks of Torture and triple stacks of translation on the Grand Inquisitor, as well as 000 and BT1. I'm just putting this on auto now, and I recommend you do the same. Grand Inquisitor has applied the 3rd stack of Torture there, and essentially we're just going to try and loop round. Now, I will admit I changed the data disks for this one just a little bit. I added a Decay Critical Turn Meter data disk here to try and control Nest a little bit better, and try to strip away her turn meter when we get the opportunity, and it is important that you have something like that, otherwise she will take turns. I'm sure that there is a better method than this for trying to get stacks of Torture, but honestly, if you want my full recommendation, ladies and gentlemen, just skip this feat. It is not worth the heartache or the hassle. I take this down all the way down to the end, and I believe we do eventually kill Nest because I took it off auto when I really should have just left it on. But we got in total 5 stacks of Torture doing this. I'm just going to skip ahead here. As you can see, eventually Nest came out of her stun, although she is dazed and she is shocked. As soon as I attack her with Mara Jade, she will die, so I let this time out here. You can try the same, maybe you can get a few more. I've heard that the Tusken boss node is actually a better place for this to be done. Be my guest if you want to try it. I recommend you just leave this one. So let us begin with the Hutt Cartel feats. I'm going in with a JML here, and I'm taking in Bauschleyer. She is a light side unit, so she's actually able to be called to assist with JML's leadership ability, that Jedi's lessons. And anybody she kills using that will actually count towards this feat. Now, I'm going in with a team full of supports, apart from JML, who's obviously a tank, and that will also give us the benefit of having no attackers in our squad, so we're actually double dipping on feats. Highly recommend you use a team like this as you're going through the sector. It should be able to deal with most units. Now, you do need to have Voluntary Vanguard for this to work, because that will force the taunt onto JML. You could potentially swap out one of these Jedi here and place in the likes of Wat Tambor to force the tank that way. However, I feel like if you don't have to use him, then you shouldn't. More Jedi in the teams means more capabilities of calling to assist. I find Xaereth to be incredibly useful in this lineup because she's actually giving us another layer of survivability. Whenever we get crit, we're going to be recovering some health and protection. Actually, just health, apologies, provided you have Xaereth's Zeta. Also, as this team is so chock full of support units, we're able to do significant amounts of damage when we use our basics. Just try not to kill the units outside of the call to assist on Bauschleyer, otherwise you will be leaving feat progression on the floor. We don't want any of that, do we? Note, JML's call to assist ability, the damage that it deals cannot actually be evaded, so even if they have foresight, you're still able to kill them. I find this to be very useful, even though my Bauschleyer is only gear 8. So it does work. It does work, ladies and gentlemen. You can also put this in a full bounty hunter setup, but I don't quite have the teams to do that without incurring the attackers in the team because, you know, units like Boba Fett are quite useful, and I haven't geared up for Jabba the Hutt just yet. Those of you that have Jabba will have this feat a lot easier. Now, I am not going to start going through trying to get Ewok feats. If you have Relic Ewoks, that will be my response. I'm sure it can be done with certain Datadisk setups. However, I do not want to be banging my head against the wall, and I think you should avoid this feat as well. Like I said, I'm avoiding 3 feats in this sector because I can get all of the other feats and the sectors done. But we need to go over the mini-boss and the main boss feats for this particular sector. But before we do, just give a quick like on this video, please. It really does help grow my channel, and I'm trying to reach out to a wider audience than normal. Thank you so much for being fantastic members of the tribe. I love yous. Let's get into it. So for the mini-boss, there are 2 feats that we need to get done. I'm only going to show you a video regarding one of them, and that is surviving with Kanan and Ezra. If you can't beat this node without using any Jedi or Sith, then there's something wrong with you. Let's go over how to do this with Kanan and Ezra. So, I'm going in on this node with Adrad. Now, it is important, we need to have the initial tether tech for this to work, okay? So I'm going in with Adrad, obviously the Voluntary Vanguard Datadisk, and we are just going to have ourselves a very merry time, let our opponents just waste their turns and not do anything. We're going to start using our AoEs here. No, I won't kill them this time because my Adrad is low on stamina, but we will survive this battle with no losses. Adrad just does ridiculous amounts of damage, and so does Cassian, as he is also a support unit. You cannot, well, you could take in Jin, but I prefer to take in Cassian because, you know, he's a support, so he's benefiting from our Zealous Ambition Datadisk setup. The damage output on this team is absolutely insane, and if they do happen to kill Kanan and Ezra, you just need to hold out and wait until you hit that hope mechanic with your Adrad, and then you'll be able to revive those units without issue. But do you see the sheer damage that Adrad can push out here? 200,000 damage there on a basic, Cassian also doing 100,000 on a basic, and we've also got K2 being called to assist. So as you can see, very, very sturdy, lots of damage output, and gets it done without issue. You just need that initial tether tech. I'd recommend you guys get it. The final boss node against Dr. Aphra needs us to win with Sana Starros. Now, my Sana Starros is gear level 50. Gear level 50? I wish he was gear level 50. My Sana Starros is level 50, gear level 1, 2 stars, and I still was able to get this done using the exact same setup, ladies and gentlemen. So, I say the exact same setup, nearly the exact same setup. Once again, we are going in with ADRAD and the Tether Tech ability. So save it, save that tech until you are at the end of this sector, and then we can come back and we can tackle these feats back to back, okay? So I'm going in with ADRAD, we're going in with Jin, Cassian, and K2, and obviously Sana. You can see the gear levels involved. But with the initial tether tech, there are no AoEs coming out at all. So we've got 2 turns, essentially, of everybody to wipe the floor. Fortunately, with enough zealous ambitions, you can just destroy face with ADRAD. Cassian also helps, but there we go, we immediately get rid of 2 people. We've got a turn meter swap that we can do with our girl Jin back over to ADRAD, even though he's got full TM anyway, and we've got mass assists, so we can just go absolutely ham and kill everyone. No, HK can be a little bit frustrating, but once he's gone, he is gone. Sana not even able to finish off that 000. And obviously we've got the voluntary vanguard that's pulling over the taunt onto K2. Super, super easy, barely an inconvenience. I had a lot of fun doing it, and you will too. And that will about do it for this particular sector. Ladies and gentlemen of the Scribe Tribe, if you haven't already, please do check out my Sector 1, 2, and 3 feat guides. I have them all available in this one playlist for your convenience and your enjoyment. If you haven't seen it already, check out this video over here where I do 1 billion damage, right? Top that.